2019 meeting. If you would all please rise.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Travis Irons. David Cyrus. Here. Ted Jermaine. Yep. Scott Charlton. Here. Scott Gardner. Here. And Don Cavella. Here. Present. Gary Southland. Here. And Tom Sinkowitz. All right, the first item, acceptance of the minutes from the April 10th, 2019 meeting. Minutes have been distributed. Any questions or discussion?
I move to accept the minutes.
Okay, I have a motion to accept the minutes. Do I have a second? Okay, I have a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the minutes signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries to accept the minutes from the April 10th, 2019 meeting. All right, first item under new business, meeting with the Board of Selectmen and Board of Education to discuss our fiscal year 2019-2020 budget proposal. I would like to start off by calling on Kathy Tendridge, certainly on behalf of the Board of Selectmen. Anything that you would like to start us off with today?
Well, first I'd like to welcome Ron Ciccatelli as our acting finance director. But I'd like to say, going into tonight, talking about the budget, that I really would like you to look at the budget as not just the numbers in the budget, but how those numbers affect our town, how it affects the safety of our town, how it affects the economic development of our town, and how it affects the education of our children in this town. I know that for all of us, it's a concern about the mill rate, but it has to be, going forward, there has to be somewhat of an increase. A 2 mil increase is unacceptable. We all know that, and we will work hard to decrease that, but you cannot have a town that you're going to bring economic development into or be able to feel like you want to move here and educate your children and enjoy the town. So as we look at the budget, that's just one thing that I would like everybody to keep in mind. Think about what those numbers represent and what we would lose. We cannot afford to lose any more services in our town, because as it is now, there are a lot of services that we're trying to get. So going forward, that's really what I would hope that everybody would have. So again, I'd like to introduce Ron Ciccatelli.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for welcoming me here. I am very grateful for the opportunity to help Plainfield move forward and try and bring different initiatives that may not have otherwise been considered. Selecting Chair Kathy Tendridge and I have a shared vision and try to be as optimistic as possible, but we also are realistic and realize that if you don't have certain funds for certain projects, certain initiatives cannot be completed. So understanding the realization of what we're working with and getting up to speed as quickly as possible has been a great experience so far. I hope to share some of what I've learned up to this point.
Thank you.
Yeah, one thing I will mention, thank you, Virginia. I know at the last meeting, a couple people had said they could not hear some of us up here. So I do want to ask everyone here, both Board of Education and Board of Selectmen, and of course Board of Finance, that if you have a bad voice or if you have the tendency to just speak very softly, please either project your voice for everybody else here so they can hear you, or if you cannot do that, that is why the mics are here. So please consider them on. Okay, I don't. That's good. At least they're here.
They're here.
Ken, I see that you have a couple handouts for us. Is there anything you'd like to touch on regarding those?
I do. The first thing that anyone has the single sheet, and we'll discuss it at your leisure when you want to do that, but, and I apologize to April 10th, but Board of Finance member, Mr. Scalaboyne, had commented at April 3rd that he thought he could identify up to $150,000. I appreciate the fact that he took the initiative, came to the office, and identified, took personal responsibility to look at line item by line item and identify them by each school. Having done that, although the board, the town doesn't have line item control, that's the only way the board could identify these are things that we'd like you to reconsider. On the back, you'll see, and we'll discuss if the Board of Finance chooses, we looked at all of the numbers, and while some of them are regulatory, like one was the possibility of reducing an occupational therapist, well, we can't because of special ed, we were able to actually rethink some of these and found $30,000. So I think his effort did get us to relook at some of these, and every single principal took the task. And you'll see that every principal accommodated some kind of reduction where they did. They clearly gave an explanation when they said, no, we can't. Like if it was $8,000 in capital and the gym doors are actually rotted, we just cannot leave that. Or if paint is chipping, we have to do that work. So there are things we qualified as needed. So we're here tonight to show that we've been doing work for 2 weeks to try to look at some reductions. A little bit upstaging this was that I know you heard us say that we have been to the Legislative Appropriation Committee. Actually, the chair of the Board of Finance, the chair of the board, actually went and met with the legislators, petitioning, pleading, asking for some, not leniency, but for some rationalism in terms of this MDR thing. We got a letter from the final statement, which is Kathy Dempsey, Chief Financial Officer for the state, and the commissioner who signed the letter. That's in the second packet, but the letter came in on Monday and said, I'm sorry, there is no reprieve. You are obligated, if you fail to meet the MDR for this year, and that number in the middle paragraph says, if we don't move from our current budget to $35,983,47, which is an increase of $551,000, there is a $1.1 million penalty, which cannot be reduced in the schools. It would actually have to come from taxpayers a year from now. She added, in terms of my communication with the state, that if you don't sustain that the following year, like we only asked for $35,927,000 for next year, it's actually $53,000, even less than what they're demanding this year, that would be an MDR. So basically they're saying that you need to have this MDR met to protect the public from a $1.1 million penalty in ECS. And if you just carry that forward, we just want to tell you that we are willing to discuss and work with you as to what any ideas we think, how do we meet that obligation? The most important thing for the public is in this year, if it is decided that we will try to meet that obligation, the proposal is not to affect any taxpayers, because if you raise the budget this year, there's no way we would spend the money anyways. You basically would be saying that in paper we will say that you have the money, and at the end of the year, that money will still be in the budget. It won't come from the taxpayers and it won't come from the fund balance. The bigger question is, it has to roll forward, and that's what the Board of Finance has been trying to address. If that were done, how do we address that in terms of the mill rate? So those are the two big issues. We have been working on looking at some reductions. We did identify about $30,000 on our side. And number two, that we got faced with the last of them, Cade Capps, the superintendent, the legislative group that represents us, the larger legislative body, the appropriations committee, and now the commission said there is no reprieve. I apologize, except for the fact that it has not been without effort to try to get them to realize this is a burden on Plainfield and a number of other communities that seems to be a little unrealistic.
Okay, thank you, Ken.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
All right, so that goes for that here. I understand that. But the projected revenue for next year that we're supposed to be receiving from the state is supposed to go down 1.3 million. So you're telling me that the taxpayers has to eat that 1.3 million?
No, if you would like me to directly respond.
Yeah,
The governor says 600,000 is the cut to the ECS. And if he does make that cut, the law requires that if they make the cut, but you awarded it, you have the right after the fact to go to the public and say, you're not getting the money, you can reduce the appropriation. So the 600,000, if it is embedded as expecting to flat fund the ECS the way it is, if he does change it, he's the governor, but the legislature has basically said they will hold the line on us because that money he's not giving back to the public, he's just moving it to the alliance districts. They're demanding that he just leave the districts alone that are getting what they get. So if you fund it with the money in of the 600,000 from the governor, and then they succumb to the governor, and there is an ECS cut, the law allows for you, just like we did last year, to make that cut on the budget, on the school side, and we would have to find some way. Depending on how much you want to cut, you may cut 500, 600, 400. That's the choice of the Board of Finance.
But that's what I'm saying. It's the numbers that we were given before the change in the Director of Finance. We were given a number that says last year was $15,991,548 for the approved budget on funding from the state, and then this year was only going to be $14,859,464, which is a $1.1 million difference.
No, that's not correct. That's my knowledge. The number that we have is 15,163,000. That is the money that, sorry, let me check.
That's what you have in your book. I know what you have in your book too, but I'm telling you what we've been given by, again, the previous finance director.
I can't speak for the finance. I can only tell you that that's our amount that we have. That's the money we received. It comes in state aid. Ronald, is it 15,163,000? That's our current ECS. I don't know what numbers you have that. I know that's the official number of the state, and I had that also qualified by the state of Connecticut.
We're going to need to probably get that because that's not what we had, and I'll find it.
And that's a correction you may need to do on your side, and there is only a 600,000 reduction to our current state, if the governor succeeds.
Was there any follow-up that you may have had with any legislators or anybody in Hartford that confirmed?
I have had a conversation with John Kolchak, who is director of NECOG, and I also had a conversation with the lieutenant governor. They did not guarantee, but they're confident that going forward, the governor, the two things that I asked about was our budget being passed on time, and if we would receive our ECS dollars. They both felt that due to the past governor, they don't want to suffer the animosity that governor has in the past, and they want to be able to make sure that the towns have what they were told they were going to get. So again, it is not a guarantee, but that was my conversation with them.
So, I mean, I think for the purposes of this, it's been, I think, pretty well documented in conversation and on video that there's been a disparity between the numbers in the proposed town side and what you've been bringing to the table right along.
Correct.
So, I mean, I think we need to just kind of level set here and find out what is that number.
Great.
And I mean, obviously, we would probably never get the answer as to why that number is what it is listed right now. So.
Right, and we need the real number before we take a vote on Tuesday, because otherwise we can't make a good decision. We're making a decision on two different numbers. Yeah, I have no problem if it's true that we have to go to whatever it is, 35.8, and that's everything's funded, and it's not going to go on the back of the taxpayer, then that's fine. We'll go to 35.8, but you know, if we've got two differences here in numbers, then how do we make an educated vote? We can't. We as a Board of Finance can't make an educated vote on that because we don't know what the real number is.
So I do think And Ken, you have a chart here that goes back to 2015-16,
Correct.
that was through your paperwork.
Yep.
It states what the ECS dollars were.
If you look at the last page of the multi-page document that I provided, the chart should be pretty straightforward. These are the audited numbers. So the very last page is horizontal, the public should have the same thing. You'll see that the ECS way back in 15-16 was 15,624. Let's just see if we're on the right page. Everybody have that?
Yep.
Okay? And you'll see that we dropped down to 14,601 in that horrible ECS year, but we're at 15,163. That's reported by the Commissioner of Education. It doesn't make any difference what numbers you have. That's the Commissioner's number to us. I mean, I don't want to challenge anybody. That's just the number. It's in your letter, basically, that says this is what you have to come up with. The reason it's just so close that they're saying we have to come up with 551 and they give us 15,163. It just looks like, why is that number close? It's too many facts to deal with. What I did try to show in the chart is this is real, 15,163. In our budget, Mr. Sharpwood, the change in the error or the assumption is at the beginning of November, when we met with all the legislators, about 28 of them, they said we're going to try to reinstate you to pre-ECS. That would have been 15,349,000. That's why we put it in. We're aggressive and optimistic. I understand when the town says that's too aggressive, you'd have to go and hold hostage 15,163,000. We understand that number, okay? Going forward, the number that the state is demanding is the bottom of the chart saying 35,983,47. That is from the state. That's the number they would want to see. Now, for this year, I understand the implications for next year, but for this year, it doesn't affect the governor's budget or anything. If you make the adjustment, you're not giving us the money, we're not spending the money, and it's not affecting the fund balance. It literally is meeting the requirement by saying that the public agreed to award 35,980,000. They don't care if you spent it, they just care that you were given that money to spend. In this next year, if you don't flat fund, that's when you then become a secondary violation. That's where they'll say, well, now you dropped again. And there are those little things. They account, in another sheet I gave you much earlier, back in February, I showed you that they adjust for poverty, they adjust for drop in student, and they even adjust, if we had, for example, 3 $200,000 placements and they went away, we would be able to adjust our budget by an amount equal to something that was a one-time cost. That's not happening right now. We're actually on the other end. We're adding children to that cost. So all I can show you is the number 15,163. Every other number has been audited by our audit firm. Those are actual numbers. The 15,163 is in, I think, our records and your records, that is the amount that's coming in from state aid. It should be in our current budget that you get from your finance director. And the only difference that we have is that we need to then bridge between the aggregate budget, which is $35,428,000 this year, and we have to get it to $35,980,000, and there's a $551,000 difference. That's what you have to do. Bridge those numbers. Next year, if the governor doesn't give you $600,000, you have the right to come to us and say, we were not giving the ECS, we can make a cut equal to that or less. The middle box just shows you the penalty of $1,000,001 in 20, it's actually 2021, and then there would be an additional $106,000 if we gave the board less, like we asked for 928 instead of 980, there would be another penalty, but we can handle that in many other ways. I think you need to get through this year, and you also have to be very cognizant of what it means for potential costs for next year. And the question will be, are there some way to look at revenue generation, tax collection or something? Is there a way to look at how we can address reducing the impact on the tax? But that's not my purview. It's not my job. I share anything, but I don't think it's my job to say that. I just know that I've worked in several of the districts. This is my 27th year. I think there are some very real opportunities.
So Tom,
Yeah.
I just think for the meeting, we've got to know what the real, somebody's got to tell us what the real ECS number is for the Tuesday meeting.
Right, and just so everybody's aware of what Scott's referring to is that, not next Wednesday, because I know that for many weeks now we've been meeting on Wednesday. On Tuesday, which is the 23rd, we're going to have a special Board of Finance meeting, 6:30, right here, same deal, just for Board of Finance. And that meeting is going to be 2 items on it. One is to have a little more further discussion and act upon the 551, as Ken was just explaining to us again. And the other part of that, between now and then, will be to get the correct numbers and obviously discuss, like Scott was just saying, whatever changes we may want to make, and then officially vote on that on Tuesday. And then, for those of you who have copies of the budget calendar, the budget report is due to the town clerk's office next Wednesday, the 24th, hence why we would not be having a meeting on that day. The other part of that is on the Board of Selectmen meeting, which is Monday, the 22nd, that item, as far as the MBR coming from the fund balance, will be discussed and also acted upon by the Board of Selectmen. And part of that would be to then move it along to the Board of Finance. That will all be happening very close together, but just so, again, so everyone's aware, that's what Scott's referring to for next week. Other questions or discussions from Board of Finance members?
Yeah. Mike Supernight, you know?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We want 2 new cruisers.
Yes, sir.
Okay. How do we decide when they need replaced?
We have a certified mechanic who looks over the cars and what the, obviously the national average is. We did not get a cruiser last year. The year before we got 1 cruiser. Typically we put 30,000 miles per year per cruiser on patrol. We have cruisers, it's your budget, I can look up which page it is, that have 180,000 miles on them. Those are not pursuit rated cruisers anymore. And we obviously need to replace cruisers. So I ask you for however many I think that we need every year.
Okay. What was the, maybe, what was the mileage recommended to replace it at?
Well, I do know that in the Norwich Bulletin in the paper, the town of Montville replacing cruisers at 75,000. We have a full-time mechanic that works for the town of Plainfield directly at the police department that services other cars. We typically run our cars to about 150,000, sir.
Okay.
And then what we do is we take those cars that are on the front line for patrol, we move them from patrol, and we use them for outside special duty. So we'll make money on those cruisers after they're retired.
I see you got one that you use for that.
Yep.
Okay. 'Cause I know cars, on the ages and all that, you know, the topic list, they don't seem that old, the cars that made the last one.
That's exactly the cars that I keep on the front line patrol for every day that go out on patrol for calls. Those cars are typically 4 to 5 years or younger. Right now, we have probably some that are 6 years that you have the complete list in your police budget. Some of them are about 6 years old.
Okay. I'm just thinking of my own household.
Yeah.
I got 3 vehicles and every one of them over the knees and.
Sometimes if you and I break down, it's okay, but if we break down going to a call, that may mean somebody's not getting
And I
service.
understand they might need brake fluid more often, stuff like that, but, you know, or tire fluid often, normal, but, okay.
Why do you lease the vehicles?
That is not a choice or a decision. I personally do not like leasing them because what happens is it compounds every year that I've talked to you about. Leasing is a cheaper option. Sometimes when we have a tight budget, leasing is an easy way to get out at a reduced cost. I don't like that because if we lease 2 vehicles this year for $30,000, then next year we lease 2 more vehicles for $30,000. And you got 30 and compounded on top of 30, which is 60,000. So the third year, you have 30 on top of that. So 30, 30, and 30 is $90,000. Where if you gave me $30,000 or $60,000 a year, depends on how many vehicles I'm asking for, we purchase the vehicles outright, and next year we don't owe any money or we don't owe interest on them. So that's not a decision that I make.
You want 2 vehicles,
That's correct.
so that would be 60,000.
That's correct.
If we were to take that out of the fund balance, that would take that out of your current budget, whatever the payment would be for a lease vehicle.
Well, that's correct, but that's under capital, sir. It's not directly under the police department budget. That goes under capital.
Capital, all right.
Yep. Yes.
Okay, the part-timer you have that works a lot of hours,
Yes.
okay. What would the difference be for her going, well, I'm assuming you pay her for each hour she puts in?
No, I don't. She puts them in out of the goodness of her heart, and I can't ask an employee to work for free, and I can't not pay an employee for free. She's a dedicated employee, and she's there 40 to 50 hours.
Okay, so we're not paying her to work over.
No, we're not paying her to work a dime more than 25 a week, sir.
Okay.
I wrote down some of the administrative duties that she does, which you also have in there under her job description. I gave you a job description.
So Mike, while you're standing,
Yeah.
I fully agree you should add an officer. I fully agree you should make that person full-time. You know, for keeping that, I see that Kathy took it out, but, so you will only give up the $70,000 shed to have a new officer and the new admin?
I sat down with the new finance director, Ron, and Kathy for the last few days, and I've cut $100,000 from my budget to try to keep the administrative assistant in there because of all of the responsibilities and duties she has, and also some other line items. So about $100,000 in cost savings from the PD, and one of them was the $70,000 shed. I did ask for that because I do think we need it, but obviously in these times, I know what I can get.
So I agree that you deserve, you know, you need the officer and you need the admin position, so I'm on board with that.
Thank you.
How many present cars do you have that are pursuit-rated cars?
6.
6, okay. I'm just, you know, if you run the numbers, you say you have 6 cars, and if you replace one a year, the oldest one's gonna be 6 years old, and I know there can be problems in between.
Yeah.
It could go earlier than 6 years. If you replace 2 cars a year, only because that way as a budget, we can say we're expecting 1 or 2 cars a year, every year. That's just to keep the fleet at 6 years old.
Can't you trade in one of the old cars towards the new car?
What we do, sir, is I take an old car that's no longer pursuit rated or front line, and I use that out on road jobs or special duty, and the town of Plainfield makes $25 an hour on that car. So instead of trading that in, a scrapyard gives me $200. If I sell it outright to somebody, maybe I get $2,500. I can make $2,500 in less than a month with leasing that car
You
out.
use it towards something to do with the police station, right?
Well, it goes into the
Sir,
general.
just a clarification, public comment is towards the end of the meeting, so please save your questions to the end. I want to get through Board of Education and Board of Finance and selecting questions. Mike, I'm sure you'll still be available in just a bit, so if you can answer questions for the public, that would be much appreciated. Don, are you all set? Are you?
I got one more
Okay.
question. Okay, the speed thing there, the trailer there,
Yes,
why don't we have a plate on that?
there is a plate on it.
There is a plate on it?
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a plate on the bottom right-hand corner of it.
Okay.
And actually, in your little log, it probably shows what plate is on it. I put every vehicle that I own in your budget, and what plate belongs on that. I can look it up for you.
I got that right here. Then I could be wrong. Okay, I don't have the plate number on here and mileage DNA. I got a red dot. No.
There's not one in there. I'll get back to you. It's gonna be a municipal plate, whatever one. It really doesn't matter because the umbrella plates.
Just that. Okay.
Okay. Other questions, discussion, whether it be for Mike or Board of Education, Board of Selectmen?
Can you put a top down on the adjustment sheet that was handed out?
Sure.
So, if you don't have one, there's a copy, right there. We, over the last couple of days, we've had a few conversations with several department heads on proposed budget and what type of discrepancies they might be aware of and possibly be willing to reduce. And we found a few on top of the chief's $100,000 savings. We found an additional $110,000 savings. And it's detailed on this sheet. If you have any questions regarding it, feel free to ask. It's pretty straightforward. The $70,000 garage that we can wait on rehabilitating is a big chunk of it, as well as the salaries in the police department. The chief said that he's willing to almost furlough onboarding somebody until September in order to supplement that, or to initiate that cost. Solar panels being currently installed should create a little bit of savings for the community. It's rough to find it's tough to find an exact estimate on that, but we're confident with what we provided in this sheet. Another big savings came from, and which was a little bit of a discrepancy in terms of the cost. When speaking to John over at the highway department, he said that the truck plow would only cost $190,000. It was budgeted in the proposal for $225,000. So that provided another $35,000 in savings. We hope to find more savings like this over the next couple of days as we have more discussions with several more department heads. This is an ongoing process, and we hope to adjust the proposed budget and make sure the mill rate comes down. Exactly what that mill rate would be, how much we'll reduce it, it's tough to say right now because of the other variables that'll have to be considered, but know that we're trying hard to not propose a 2-point mill increase. That's definitely something we're opposed to. Does anybody have any questions?
Maybe Kathy. The printer, everybody's talking about the got split between different departments. Can we put that in one separate category by itself and keep track of who uses it?
I'm sorry, who uses what, Don?
That printer here,
The printer?
yeah, Marianne.
So the map printer?
Yeah. Or-
Yes.
I thought we had income coming from that. Don't we charge for copies of that?
So what happens with that map printer, and it is in the planning and zoning, but different departments use that, and you're absolutely correct. There is revenue for that, but the revenue does not show, like under the town planning department, it goes into the general fund balance. So what we try to do in the budget is determine how much the departments that use it and put that expense on them instead of just the town planners. In the past, that has never been done. It was just a full responsibility. It was all put into the town planning department. So we're trying to, again, be a little more open in each department, show their expenses so that we can show how each department, what their true expense is. Again, there's going to be more discussion on that, Don.
Yeah, well, all I'm saying, can't we just take that, put it into its own category with the income that comes from it, stuff like that? I realize it's gonna cost us something somewhere because, town employees use it.
Well, that is
But
something that we
take
will,
out the other,
we will be, like
it's
I
gonna
said,
cost,
we
it's
are
gonna cost
working
us
on
the same
that.
money, but
Yeah.
it's just there.
So what you're saying is really just put it under the town general, instead of breaking it down to a department, and just show the revenue, and then
We could break it down to the department, but yeah, take it out of their budget, because
Yeah,
because everybody uses it.
okay.
So do we know roughly where we sit with these additional adjustments? Or is it too early to tell?
Well, the adjustments in total so far exceed $200,000.
Yep.
We hope to add to it the more we work with department heads and try to figure out what they might find as a discrepancy in comparison to the proposed budget at this point. Go ahead.
Okay, so where it sits right now, what is that rough mill increase, do you know?
There is, it's too hard to say because so much is contingent upon the ECS and MRB decision next week. So there are other variables to take into consideration when making a mill increase. And I'd much rather comment on that when a little bit more dust is settled. Any speculation would create a bar for us to match and be able to right now, we have to take a number of things into consideration.
Do you have a mill rate in mind as to what we can sell the town?
I'd much rather have it below one. And I'd like to keep it there, that comment there. I mean, anything above one would be unacceptable.
So you're gonna keep it below one?
But that's where our efforts are aimed.
Well, as far as my opinion goes, there's no question it has to be below one. I will vote for anything over one. I don't, whatever you gotta do to get it under one, it has to be done.
And I think, like Ron said, a lot of that depends on the ECS dollars, because you figure that's $600,000, that's a big amount right there. So if we use the number that is coming from the state that the school is using, that's definitely going to be a very big decrease to the mill rate.
I believe that $640,000 is the correct rate, by the way. I've seen it in several places where they list all the towns, and next year it's gonna be 440, so we already know if everything passes. And there's no way we're gonna know concrete before we set this budget. But if we wait to set a budget till the state tells us, it's just not gonna happen. We're gonna have to do it by guesstimate, the same way we've done in the last 2 years.
So did I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. You are in support of using the 15 mil 163, or you're not in support of that for the town side?
The budget?
Yes, the ECS dollars, you're in support of using the same number the school is
Yes.
using? Okay.
Yeah, so I guess my question is what exactly are we waiting for to determine that their number's right? Are you gonna get some kind of edict or something? I mean, I think it's pretty safe to say, I think it's, well, no, I mean, for the purposes of what we have to do, we have to settle on what number to use. And I mean, these guys have plenty of supporting facts that it's gonna be the 15 million, so.
And I think one thing, and Ron, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think one thing that you have to think about, if we don't use that $600,000 to where we want it, if we use it and we don't get the 15 mil 163 from the state, the worst thing that can happen is we'll have to take those dollars out of the general fund balance. So and this is just me as your selectman speaking, I think the best way to do it is to use the 15 mil, the 163, because that's definitely going to bring our mill rate way down to where we want it, and feel confident that we will get that, or if we don't get that, the worst thing that can happen is it will have to come out of the general fund balance. But if we use the number right now that is in our proposed budget, the 14 million, we're never going to get our mill rate down to a number that we want to present to the public. I live in this town, I don't want to pay that. So those are the things that we have to think about. We are not going to get a definite answer from the state. The state is not going to call us up and say, this is the number you are going to get. We have to go by the history of what we've received in the past years and feel confident with the new governor in that that's what we're going to receive.
But that's what happened to us 2 years ago, and we started scrambling. Then all of a sudden, we're 1 point whatever million short, and yeah, we're giving money out of the fund balance, we're giving the grant stabilization money. So saying that you're gonna go to the town and say that you're gonna have 15.1 million when you don't really know the number, all we're doing is we're fooling the public and we're fooling ourselves. I get it, we're not gonna have a real number. That's why when the charter revision came up, we should have moved our budget dates back to where the governor's gonna do it. We're gonna end up getting a budget number in October, and then we're gonna find out and go, hey, surprise, and we don't know if it's gonna be the 15.1 million surprise, the $14.5 million surprise, or whatever surprise he decides to give us. So if we're just looking to drive down the mill rate so it looks good come the vote in May 20th, then let's just make up numbers and tell the public this is what we're gonna do.
But that is not making up numbers.
Sure
That
it
is
is.
using the history of what we've received from the ECS. And Ken, you can speak more on that because
Just to the point, it's his fault.
I don't, you can say you can go by history all you want, but what did history do to us 2 years ago? We had the representatives of the state sitting here. I can remember Paul Sweet getting so mad at Ann because she's going, Paul, everything's gonna be fine. We're gonna be good. The state's gonna take care of you. Everything's good. And then what happened? We didn't get anything near what she was sitting out there in the public promising. We're just fooling ourselves if we think we're just gonna go, hey, 14.1 million, congratulations. It's not the way it works.
So, Jim, counterpoint is just that if we really look at what happened, the reality of what happened is that we were told there would be $1 million cut on the town side and a $757,000 on our side. The Board of Finance decided to only cut $693 because that's what we qualified as the amount of cuts we could make. And at the end of that year, you actually not only did not cut the $1 million, you put $500,000 back in the fund balance because you had that revenue to cover. In addition, we brought in $723,000 in special ed excess aid, and we made an agreement not to use that money. We did not come back for it. You virtually took in $720,000 in special ed excess aid that we did not take 1 penny from. You put $500,000 in your fund balance. There's no evidence that the town suffered because of the ECS. You actually rebuilt, you strengthened your fund balance. If that money were not deducted, we wouldn't have lost CNAs, the behavior management specialists, the French, the Spanish. We would not have lost all of the programs that we lost, the people. We would have not raised class size. Our point is that if you go in with the number that we project is the right number, and historically the same thing happens, when you asked us to make the cuts, we froze the budget. When you told us that people voted down, we cut those programs. We did everything that was asked of us as a Board of Education to meet the expectation. At the end of the year, for all the programs that was lost, you put $500,000 more in the fund balance at the loss of children getting those programs. Those programs are really lost. They still don't exist today because we made a decision based on people telling you you're going to lose $1 million that you just did not lose. There are revenues that you could look at in terms of just collection rate of the taxes. Are you collecting all you could? You could be looking at this from a revenue side instead of the projection that we know we're going to get hit. We do our fair share when the real number is awarded as an ECS. That's really history of what happened. No one got hurt in this town because of that. Fund balance went up. We cut the programs. The only one who got hurt is children lost field trips, certain programs, and certain coverage. That's what happened. I don't think that should happen twice in this town.
Every year we put money back into the fund balance, just FYI. Every year, $500,000 to $600,000 goes back into the fund balance. That was not a special year. Don't make it sound like that we took $500,000 away from the kids, because every year we put $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 in that fund balance because of tax sales that the tax collector does. So don't make it sound like that we gave away $500,000 and took it away from the kids, because that's not what happened. It's some, you want to go with history? Guess what? History over the last 10 years in Plainfield, we put $500,000 to $600,000 into the fund balance every year. So don't make it sound like we took something away from the kids by putting $500,000 in the fund balance. That's not what happened.
Just to state, I don't know technology, but I was able to look up our 2018-2019 ECS, and it is that $15,163,177. I verified that through the State Department of Education and along with the State House with the budget, and that's the current funding.
The numbers were going through the ECS. Okay? Okay. A year ago, so, well, whenever it was. Yeah. Okay. It's an oddball year, it's the average.
Okay.
Okay, so we can expect an oddball year. We got to deal with it. That's all.
Well,
It's just changing the average number a little bit.
all I'm saying is we're sitting here talking about driving the mill rate down by using a number that could or could not happen, is all I'm saying. Use whatever number you want, that's fine, but we've had, whatever. I'll call the state myself too.
I don't think we're looking to drive the mill rate down. We're trying to keep the increase at a minimum.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody thinks we're gonna drive the mill rate down.
I understand that, but what I'm saying too, Ted, though, is, again, and I'll find the paper, there's other papers in there from the state of Connecticut that showed 14 at one point, the number that Kelly gave us. This is the piece of paperwork you're supposed to go to the town budget with. Not what comes out of the school system, this is the paper. So somebody's got to adjust this paper if that's the case, and show from the state of Connecticut where the number is. That's all I'm asking. But this right here is the number, Ted, that I'm gonna use, because this is the number that came from the town of Plainfield.
Well, we are in the process of adjusting the budget, and that includes the revenue side, and we are projecting the 15.1 million. Correct me if I'm wrong, if we don't meet that 15.1 million, it will cost us an additional 1.1 million?
The 15.1 is the ECS award. The number that we have to do is the appropriation.
Correct.
So, and that's the 35 million. The 15.1 is just what the state's giving us towards the 35. The number is the appropriation, not the ECS.
My mistake.
I do ask you to look at the last page that we're looking at, the chart, and Mr. Chow, with all due respect, if you just look at the total appropriation, you can say we did not take the money. Just look at the total appropriation at the top. We had $34,603,000 in 2016. We went to $35,171,000. And during the ECS reduction year, we budgeted and spent only $34,861,000. There is clearly a reduction of $747,000 in that appropriation. We did make a cut. You can say we didn't take it from the kids. We did. You can say that we didn't put money in the budget because it's been consistent. That money was taken. That was the amount. And if you look at the current budget, $35,428,000, that money all comes from the new state. That's the money that came against the $34,861,000. The state gave us $561,000. The tax rate went from $17,788,000 last year to only $17,767,000. The school has not been the burden on the tax rate. These are the numbers that your finance director has and the auditors give to us. These come off your charts, your reports. I'm not doctoring these. These are the actual numbers. You cannot say to the public that we got the budget we needed and you didn't hurt them. You took money legitimately so because you were going to be hurt by the town, by the state, and we made that cut right there. We functioned at more than $500,000 less that year, and we cut programs. At the end of the year, we were fortunate enough to have more recovery in funds than you anticipated. The budgets are the budgets. We're only asking that you use the numbers that we believe are appropriate, and if that ECS doesn't come in, just like we did it back in 17-18, we will do what's necessary to meet the Board of Finance expectations. If you put us at $500,000, $600,000 less, and then they give it to us, you have a $600,000 MBR issue because you are below what they gave us. You're back to a $1.2 million MBR, and no people in the town are going to vote to give us $600,000 more when you already said you're going to make it work with $600,000 less. You need to give the people the real number of what it costs to run, and we showed you on a list of how many things we cut and how many things we added, so you can see they're balanced. The only numbers that are coming in are salaries, which are 1.4%, the lowest in the town, and the health insurance. So the only increases we've asked for. I just think that if this is the meeting where we're justifying why we believe the Board of Education has come in conservatively, we're coming in lower than the MBR requirement, and we're just asking that you award the MBR requirement, and then we'll work with you to help make that work for the town and the schools, so that we'll figure out the revenue side. I think the discussion has to be around the revenues that can help the people feel that the mill rate will be a reasonable mill rate. There's just a difference in terms of what I believe has happened to the programs and the students.
Are you using any of the excess revenues that the tax collector expects for this year in your projections? 600, right? All right.
Are you talking about the
Unexpected
supplemental?
tax revenues over and above the 97%.
We've been taking a look at
She's
it.
gonna collect somewhere, she's already at about $600,000 over. You're not
She's
using
at
that?
100% right now.
I think she's beyond 100%.
Yeah, okay, so that equates to something over 600,000. But my question is, are you using that number in this
No.
projection?
No?
My question is, what is the collection rate for the revenue side of the proposed budget? Is it 95%? You're using 97?
Well, for the proposed,
For the,
for the adjusted.
Okay.
97 is standard every year.
Correct.
Some figure we use, but I don't know why. We've been collecting 100 plus for the last 5 years. But that's gonna stop pretty soon, I'm told. That's all right? We're catching up with all the back taxes.
we are doing good catching up with the back taxes, but yes.
Yeah, as soon as we catch up, then it's gonna be closer to 97 than 100. Well, what does each 1% equate? 200,000?
So if you look at the chart.
Yeah,
If you
I
collect
believe you have the chart.
98 instead of 97, how much more money?
Yeah, the mill rate chart in there.
Well, that's what this is?
Correct, so 1 mil is 969,000.
And Scott, just to confirm with you, we will have an adjusted copy of this proposed budget. Obviously, we'll be looking at the numbers that, we're discussing tonight, so we'll have as accurate as we can be to discuss and make our decision for Tuesday's meeting. Obviously, we're not doing that right now. There will be some follow-up.
On Tuesday, how much time do we have to bring it to town? I mean, on Tuesday, we decide to make more adjustments. Would that be enough time to get it posted and everything for the public hearing?
It's my understanding, as long as we meet that deadline on Wednesday.
Yes.
Yeah.
On Wednesday?
Yeah.
Ron, can you look at, for Tuesday's meeting too, we've got a $100,000 increase going in for the pension. Can you look at, is there any harm if we keep that at 1.1 million instead of going to 1.2, to take the $100,000 out of that piece of the budget?
I'll take a look at it.
Does that mean, again, if it really came down to it, let's say at the end of the year, you have $500,000 left over, we don't put the extra 100,000 in, to make a general fund $100,000 payment into the pension fund versus putting it in this tax year. There's $100,000 we can knock off, the mill rate right there. I think the concern was that we underfunded. Yeah, somebody at some point said, well, we should be at 1.5 million a year, but we're not even there anyway, so why, in a tight budget season? I can tell you when I was on the Board of Ed back in the early 2000s, when we were paying into the pension, we would wait till the end of the year and go, hey, guess what, we got $200,000 left over, let's put it into the pension fund. We would never budget to put extra money into the pension, right, Virginia? She was on the board too. So that's what we used to do, is if we needed to put extra money in, we'd wait till the end of the year and see what was left over. So to me, there's $100,000 we don't need to put into the budget right there.
I'll take a look at it.
Kathy, because the bulky waste costs are going back up by 17,000, is there a thought to raise the price of the bulky waste sticker?
So that is something that is on the table that we're discussing. As everybody knows, there is no charge for bulky waste. So one of the things when we renegotiate the contract, that's one of the things I believe, Scott, that we are
That's what I'm
going to
saying.
consider.
You can charge $25 is what I'm saying. You know what I mean? It's a minimal fee.
Because I looked at the history over the years, and there hasn't been a fee for bulky waste for a lot of years, but at one point it started at $10 and it had gone up to $75. But if you recall, a few years back, to help cut the expense in the budget, the contract was renegotiated, and where we used to have 2 days and 18 visits, it had been adjusted to 1 day and 4 visits. So when I was elected, I did meet with the owners, and the only thing that they would budge on me is they gave us 4 more days. If we were to add that additional day back in, they were going to charge $19,000, and I said, no, I would not do that. I would take whatever 3 days that they gave us and wait until the budget contract was renegotiated and work from there.
There's an added expense for the swimming pool and extra lifeguards for almost $10,500. From looking at the revenue, we're not even gonna hit what the revenue's supposed to be, so why would we be adding $10,500 to the swimming pool?
So what they're trying to do is add new programs to the pool to bring in more revenue, and that is one department that Ron and I will be meeting with to discuss their budget. We were supposed to meet with them yesterday, but the rec director was out due to her child being sick, so.
Yeah, to me, that's just an area of, we're not gonna meet the revenues, so why are we adding money to the expense line?
The pool, we can adjust that, if we adjusted the revenue just a few years back. You need to give it some time to see where it's gonna play out. Okay? I'm not in favor of cutting the pool.
I'm not saying,
I know what
I'm not saying cut the
yeah,
pool.
but maybe we need to adjust the revenue on it, right?
Well, you can either adjust it to make up the $10,500 they're asking for. I'm not saying cut the pool at all. But I'm saying if you got a $103,000 figure in there, and you're not making that $103,000 figure, why are we adding an extra $10,500 of expenses? It makes no sense.
Right, but we can, I'm thinking, for years, we always got over the revenue that we budgeted for. And now, okay, maybe that number went too high, and, we might have, maybe adjust. Whatever that number is, I don't know. That's all.
Do we know what the mileage is on the maintenance truck they're asking for, the planning truck?
One of the things I just put a request in is to have all our vehicles checked by the mechanic. So right now, they took in, and Chief, maybe you could correct me if I'm wrong. I had just put the request in with you to have all our vehicles checked, and I know that your mechanic has checked either 1 or 2 of our vehicles. So that's something, Mr. Charles, that I am working on.
That's correct. He's just doing a basic safety road test on them all, and obviously checking out the mechanics on them.
Yeah, I was just curious what the mileage was.
I guess maybe 2 questions. Our town vehicles, town registered vehicles don't have to be inspected by state.
I'm sorry, don't have to be inspected by the state? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Chief, again, because the mechanic handles all the vehicles, do they have to be inspected by the state?
No,
Our town vehicles?
they do not. They're municipal plates that could go on any vehicle, and they're umbrella coverage for liability and insurance reasons, sir.
Okay. And on that one, why do we need a 4x4 vehicle plan?
So one of the things that had been brought to my attention is that when they go out on construction sites, a lot of the construction sites, depending on the weather, they can't drive onto the site. So that was a suggestion that if they were to get a new vehicle, if they could have a 4-wheel drive for that reason.
They can't park next to water. I don't know. I didn't suggest nothing.
No, thank you.
I'm in agreement with what's on using the fund balance to fix the roof of the maintenance garage. If we do that, do they still need a shed? Do you know what the shed's used for $25,000? What's that, why they need the shed to fix the roof?
So I think what happened, Mr. Shaw, the reason for the shed is inside their highway garage, where they don't have enough room, is what I was told, to put all their small tractors and their equipment. So, I mean, I will question them more about that, but that's what I was told.
I'm gonna pull my inner Ted here now. So, the last meeting, Kyle said he needs a lot of money for computers. So I think, to me, that should be more of a fund balance expense. We should pull that out of the budget and give Kyle $50,000 out of the fund balance to fix the computer system.
Well, Kyle would be very happy to hear
Well,
that.
that's what I'm saying, but and it's trading it out, it's not really saving anything, but you're trading out, taking it out of the tax money and taking the 50,000 and pulling it out of the general fund instead, because I calculated everything he had, and, you know, it was about $50,000 that he needs to replace all the computers, and that's fine. But to me, it should come out of the fund balance and not out of that. So it should just be moved, so I would make his line item flat, and then pull 50,000 out of the fund balance instead.
Thank you.
Right, Ted?
You're only partially right.
He did it right, come on, say yes.
I'm all in favor of using the fund balance, and I have been since I sat here. Not using the fund balance, making the fund balance grow, means to me you're overtaxing the people. But he's also included the police department, that figure is now 82,000, not 50.
Right,
That takes care of the town and the police department's computers.
But Trey's gonna save us money, right, Trey?
Can I speak?
No, I was just kidding. I knew you couldn't speak, that's why I said it.
I'll address your question when it's appropriate.
All right. Other questions or discussion?
I'd like to get back to the town pool.
Yeah.
The revenues there. I understand. I remember when you talked about adding the second lifeguard, it was for safety. That's what that was about. I understand that. Have we looked at increasing the price of the pool? I don't even know what it's at right now. So, I mean, is that an option, or are we
So
going to
right
push people
now,
out because of it?
we are looking at everything. We're trying to look at bringing in more revenue, doing more classes. One of the things that, and you'll see this in our budget too, is that we've never had a marketing budget. So for the town of Plainfield, we don't market the industrial park, we don't market our properties, we don't market our pool. So when new people move in, or when somebody's looking to move here and there's no marketing for the town of Plainfield. So that's one of the things, David, that is important. So right now, we're looking at the whole package.
All right, other questions, discussion? Now, we can also move on to the next item if there is further discussion. I know we've already actually touched on it a couple times. Discussion of the proposed capital improvement plan 2019-2020. One of the topics I know we already discussed on there was police cruisers, the 2 Dodge Chargers, and the estimate on there. So thank you, Chief, for that update earlier on that. Any other comments or discussion? No? Okay. Hearing none. Moving on to citizens' participation.
Trav Harmon, live in Moosup. I will answer that. I talked to Kyle after the last meeting, and I actually further reviewed even more. And some of the numbers that were guesstimated from other departments, I can't give even remotely close to, but they're inaccurate. They are either vastly overpriced or there's already services in place. I talked to Kyle about some of the things, so I'm confident with what he's done so far. Not that I've analyzed anything, but they're out there. The second question I have was, I actually, long ago, before, I used to have an insurance license, and I believe the rec department last time was approaching hospitals for possible use of the pool for stuff. I don't believe that's the proper approach. That's basically, whipping a donkey. What you go after is the insurance companies. Because if the insurance company goes up to DKM and says, listen, we have a pool here, we'll give you more reimbursement if you bring them here, that is going to make them flow into here. The hospitals go after the money. Path of least resistance, if the insurance company's carrying it over, that's how I look at it. Third, I don't want to use everyone's time, but what is the town's policy, thanks to the Supreme Court changing, on after conviction civil forfeiture? I mean, I see the great police force here, and I see WINY stopping people left and right, you guys, cars and stuff like that. The Supreme Court says we can take it after they are convicted, and there's plenty of convictions. What is the town policy on that? That would be great to sell a whole bunch of vehicles that, hey, we won. So.
Supreme Court decision is great, but the state of Connecticut loves to steal from the asset forfeiture account. The asset forfeiture account is set up so it goes back to the police departments, and we can use it for drug education, we can use it for raids, we can use it for bulletproof vests, whatever is designated for it. We do have an asset forfeiture account, approximately $7,000 are in that account right now. And that's the type of stuff that we use it for. We use for combating of narcotics. But the state of Connecticut, typically in the last few years, have robbed that. We do have 3 cars right now that we have seized, that we own, that we are going to be selling. We'll sell it either at auction or we'll sell it to a private deal. So we do go after that. We do use it, but the problem is the state of Connecticut gets their hands on it. Also, we only get 70% of the asset forfeiture. Percentage by law has to go to the blind, and then a percentage has to go to the state of Connecticut for the processing of the paperwork. And a lot of times that asset forfeiture is a plea deal or a bargain with the individual. So if you really love your car, you'd rather spend 30 more days in jail and get your car back and get out. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments?
Yep, I have one.
Yep.
This question is for Kathy Hendrich. It's obvious you follow social media and can see the speculation on the recent parting of the previous finance director, Kelly Vachon. Your response to Winnie as to her departure being a personal matter was quite vague, but I don't want to get into that. During the last high school graduation, during your speech, you claimed that all of our students have opportunity like you. My question is, how is not posting Plainfield's position as finance director showing our youth that Plainfield offers them the opportunity like they did you?
So can I answer that because it's not on the agenda? So as I stated, we have an acting finance director right now. So we will be advertising for a finance director, and that is not to say that our acting finance director cannot fill that position, but right now he is an acting finance director.
And this is no disrespect to you whatsoever. If you want to move to this town and help fix it, and you can prove to us residents that you're capable of it, we could use all the help we need right now.
That's my intention. I'm not here to make things worse. I definitely want to do it. So yeah, I will get nothing but my best, and I hope to prove that to you over time. It's not going to happen overnight, but we do have a lot of shared vision. We do have a lot of ideas that I think I can bring to the community from the outside. I hope to learn a lot about the community from you as well. And if you have anything that you can advise me on, just a couple of notes I've already taken tonight would be have been a great help. So, and anything in terms of communication to kind of spark ideas in a new direction is definitely welcome.
Okay, thank you.
Not to split hairs, but what was that quote from Winnie? It was a what matter?
That it was a personal matter.
Personnel.
Personnel matter.
Yeah, that makes a difference.
Yes.
My Mike Supranat, Chief of Police. I know you talked about the dump passes, Scott, just for a little bit of history. When we did do the $25 surcharge and we did the $75 surcharge, we saw a lot of illegal dumping on the sides of the road because people couldn't afford them. Joe Tatro, more than happy to tell you, when I went to $75 a road, we were responding to a lot of those, got a lot of those complaints. So I just ask you to use a little caution with the surcharge because people can't afford that, or if they don't afford it, they just rather dump on the side of the road. I am looking into government programs. I know we talked about cars. We talked about cars for other departments. The car that it's a Chevy Impala that's driven by the tax assessor. I purchased through a government program for $4,500. It's not guaranteed what cars are up there. Sometimes it's trucks, sometimes it's four-wheel drive, sometimes it's Impalas, and that car had about 60,000 miles on it that we got for that deal through the police, where we could purchase those things or those cars. I would be more than happy to look into that, to purchase more cars, which I talked to Kathy about, but we just need the funds to buy them. And sometimes when you buy them, you may have to send an employee or two down to Georgia or wherever it's from. You know, we'd like to get them in Groton, but sometimes it's New York or whatever. And that's how we did that car. I think we got that car in Jersey. So we are looking into that to try to reduce or save those monies. And the pension question that you had, a comment that you had, just because I went to a meeting and I heard it, and I don't know if you were aware of it. Supposedly the liability of the pension right now of what we're paying out has to be, they would like us to put $1.5 million in there so the pension grows, or the growth, but what's happening is we're paying out approximately $1 million in pension liabilities right now. So if you put in under that, our pension fund will be decreasing, and that affects our, I guess, our Moody's bond rating. So that's the biggest thing, that 1.1 million or the 100,000 from the meeting that I attended. So I didn't have a chance to answer those, but I just wanted to tell you those.
Okay. Well, that's why I asked the question.
Yep. And
We're at 1.1, we're trying to go to 1.2, and we decreased it last year.
I just happened to be at that meeting.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Thanks.
If you need somebody to go get a car in Florida, let me know.
I'll go with you.
Other questions, comments? Yeah.
Naomi Smith, Plainfield. How much money is currently in our town fund right now? Account.
You want to know the fund balance?
Yes, please.
Fund balance is, again, it depended on, well, right now it's 7.467, $7,467,211.
And that's the unreserved. What's the reserve?
It's the unreserved.
Okay, what's the reserve?
I don't have that on. Yeah, it's hard to get that on.
So my next question is to Superintendent DiPietro. How many years in a row has the school given the majority of, or a good portion of the ECS funding that's allocated to the town? How much would you say in a percentile has the town taken instead of our school and our students getting?
All
To
ECS,
build that fund.
all ECS goes to school. It is the requirement, and it's the first money that goes. That's never been returned. The only thing that we talked about is the special ed excess aid is funding that's there in an emergency, and we try to make sure we budget to handle our emergency so that we don't call on that money. That money has been returned as part of an offset to the tax burden or to the fund balance.
Because one of the things that I noticed between the Board of Education budget and the town budget is that the teachers took less of a pay raise this year than the town side did. And I'm just wondering, how did that happen? Who did the negotiations?
Right, but not accurate. It looks good on our budget, and what happened?
Percentile-wise.
Right, the board actually fought very hard. We have 6 unions, and then we have about 27 independent contracts. The majority of all of the contracts either were at 1.5 or took a 0 freeze for one of the years. The teachers actually took 2.5, but they didn't get a 3-year contract. We limited it to 2 because we said we don't know the predictability of the future. And then the reason that they could accept is, and Mr. Capella was part of us because we always have a Board of Finance member, is we also, I do the projection each year of the numbers. We typically have 5 retirees. So 5 retirees with a $75,000 teacher being replaced by a $40,000, it's about a $30,000 reduction. We actually were able to look at the people who call me personally and say, I'll leave at the end of the year. We had 8. So 8 is significant. That's how we brought the 2.5 down to 1.4, or 1.23. And then in addition, if you remember, because we knew the budget had to be cut, we took out an 8th grade teacher because the numbers coming in are about 22 less, 1 less teacher. We took out 2 teachers from the high school, 3 less teachers in addition. So the end budget result is one of the most conservative increases in teacher salary. But I think it was fair. I can also tell you, you don't want to monopolize, but you can check the entire region. No one in the region got less than 2.8%. We not only got 2.5% for 2 years, they also added 3 days of extending their days so that they can be here with children. And did really well in negotiations, and we certainly credit the teachers for understanding our need.
Absolutely.
And just to speak on the town side of the contracts, the 2 contracts that I've negotiated, if you look at their 3-year contracts, they're below or approximate 2.3 over a 3-year period, their increase. And one thing that was added into their contracts that has never been put in a contract before, if the state cuts us by 10% or more, we can reopen our contracts and renegotiate, and that has never been put in a contract before.
Naomi, I will follow up with you on the reserve side, if I can.
Yeah, because I have a great concern at the fact that our children keep getting more and more chopped away. The residents keep getting more and more taken away or not provided in the town. But every year, it's an emergency situation, and then the tax increases fall on the burden of the taxpayers for less. And with the state coming down with a lot of what their tax proposals possibly are going to be, you're going to start driving people and taxpayers out of this town. There's no incentives for us to stay here. There really isn't.
They're not doing it now?
No,
They're not driving us out now?
they're going to be. I'm planning on.
They're doing it now. All
Yeah.
right, Naomi, do you have any more questions? All right, I will, like I said, I will follow up with you on the reserve side. Other questions or comments? Yes.
Jack Down, Mr. Pond. Why do we need a union?
For education.
Pardon?
For education or...
For education, the roads, the town hall. The unions don't do nothing for the people. They only do for the union.
Well, there are perspectives on union. In my career, 47 years, I found that the unions can be very reasonable if you treat them with respect, and they represent the voice of that membership. There are only 3 big things that are dealt with: wages, benefits, and working conditions. That's really...
How much money you pay them?
Yep.
Okay, Charlie Command sat up there for over 50 years. And they said to him, we're gonna put a union in. He said, when you put your union in, we're gonna close the doors. And he was there for 50-some years. And he had employees that stayed for 50-some years. You ain't got your unions doing that. I'm sorry, I just don't like them, and, you know, it's...
I just would encourage you, because I understand that's your position, I won't change your position. I just want to encourage you to know that when Plainfield is doing something right, we should also acknowledge that. 4 years ago, in 2012 actually, Paul Sweet and I had talked about the fact that we have a lot of people who get a pension, but there wasn't a contribution to it. And the issue of the pension budget was being compromised. So we virtually adjusted our contracts one at a time to say that all new people coming in would be on a defined contribution, not defined benefit. They don't exist. Anyone new coming in is not getting that benefit. That's how we're preserving and protecting the fact those people who were given the pension and their benefit will be preserved as long as we keep that pension. But that's a huge shift and a cost savings. In virtually within 20 years, that cost is going to be $1 million savings. As you know, we're putting more and more. I just think that there are some times when unions do acquiesce, and we just need to acknowledge it. You can have your own opinion about a union, but sometimes we do things right. Not me, I'm not a union, but...
Oh, I understand that. But you're sitting here saying the school cut $100,000 or $700,000, and the union's helping you save $1 million. How much is that, $300,000? Take the union out. Laid you off and we got it made. No disrespect.
No,
I mean, we just hired this gentleman, what was it, $1,777 or $76 a week? It's public knowledge, right? How much is that a year?
If you look on the budget, it would be in there because that's what the previous finance director was making.
Correct. So you started off at $20-some thousand more than your boss. And my last words is, don't say no to him, because you'll start sitting back in the audience. And trust me.
Yes. How much can the fund, Joe Bissett, Plainfield Pike, how much can the fund balance go down before it'll affect the ratings with Moody? Which will cost the town a lot of money.
I'd like to try and have 2 months in reserve for fund balance.
Just too much expensive, that's it?
2 months in reserve.
That would keep our rating with Moody?
Correct.
Okay, surprising me a little bit.
That's $8 million, Joe.
Right now.
2 months is $8 million.
So we're on to 200.
Nobody mentioned a teacher's pension. Earlier in the year, there was a lot of talk that 25% was going to be passed down to the town. Is that still on the table?
It came out of committee and it's been eliminated.
Not going to be a surprise later on in the
Not
budget
this
year?
year. Well, as far as any politics, it's not a surprise.
It also makes me nervous about passing the budget before the state does, as we've gotten burned several times because of this already. And if it was me, I would recommend not passing the budget and go off 1/12 until the state passes their budget. And the $550 million that you were discussing before, you said you wouldn't need to take it from the fund balance, or I'm not sure how that can happen if you don't take it out of the fund balance to give to you. How do we satisfy the state?
That's it, easy. This may help people. So we're about 551,000, not 551.
Joe scared me.
It's like, holy crap.
I'll take a raise and retire. 551,000. So here's what happens. It's already April 17th. There's 2.5 months. I can't possibly hire anyone new. There's no way you can spend $500,000 say hiring new people. To spend $500,000 between now, when we're already budgeted to the end. Our budget right now is balanced. We already know. Our projection is that we're going to end the year. We're committed. We're not adding anything new. If the public says we're obligated to bring that to $35,982,000, if that's what the public says, you don't have to ask the taxpayers for money because we're not going to spend any more money than the $35,000,004 that we already have.
But I thought if we didn't pay it,
So
we're going to
you're
get
not-
penalized next year.
No, we're not paying it, you just have to appropriate it. If I don't spend it, the state doesn't care if you don't spend it, they only care if you gave us the money. Their protection is for children. If children got a program last year, they don't let you cut the program next year and say they can't have it. That's what the ECS protects, children's rights.
Other questions, comments? Yes, sir.
Yes, Bruce Shaw, Plainfield. We got rid of our bus department because it roughly cost $2 billion. How much is the bus department costing us now? We say because their contract's up this year, right?
There's an extension. It's costing about $2.5 million for our budget.
So $500,000,
They're working with us this year to drop $100,000. That's what we're looking to achieve by the end of the year. And then we'll see if we can sustain that by looking at two. And then a little bit of what it's hard to explain is we had 40 bus drivers. They were under our employ. Even though it's $2.5 million, those 40 people were paid under KERMA. They were paid for health insurance, everything. That's all gone. The town now, I think, collects $70,000. I think the number is close to $70,000 in rent from them. They used to get $35,000 from us. So there's a residual savings of almost $250,000. That's not on the bus side anymore. It's just savings for the town.
Taxpayers, because a lot of them lived in town.
Right.
No longer, so we took our jobs away to pay $2.5 million.
Actually, every single person under the agreement was given a job, and they will all continue employed at the same rate, and actually now all have health
We
care
don't own
benefits.
the buses no more.
What?
We owned the buses before.
We owned them before.
That's right, I know, I worked for the town for 30 years.
Right.
I remember when you came.
I remember. And now the buses are less than 5 years old. Our buses, as you remember, were 200,000+ miles, and at least a third of them were 10 years old.
Up to 3 million. What's to say they couldn't raise it up to 3 million?
They can't, we have a contract that they can't exceed. We have the rates that are set.
Yeah, but there are contracts not settled yet, right? It's still up.
No, our contract is already passed. The contract that we have is 5 years, can be extended more. We only extended 1, and they agreed to freeze our rates, not go up. That's the reason why we did it. It basically held them hostage to our current rates. We did that to freeze our costs, because it was a tight budget.
So it still costed more than our own people did, right?
Actually,
That 2.5 and 2, it's not hard to figure out.
okay,
And we
but
employed our own people in town, which pay taxes, which can't afford to pay the taxes.
what I just explained though is that the savings are on KERMA, workers' comp, unemployment, and health insurance. Those costs have gone away. There's 40 people.
Well, if they were part-time, they weren't getting insurance.
Oh, no, there were 12 that were.
12, exactly, 12.
Right. Now they all get insurance, but we don't pay.
Yeah, but 12 were still paid on their insurance.
Yep, they were. And those went, and
So the answer to the question is, it went up. And we have that extra money coming in, where is that going?
what extra?
They pay us use of the building up there, you just said.
That's a town revenue, which is basically to help offset the cost of, even including waste management, even that gets charged against the bus company.
Comments, questions? Yep.
Hi, Laura Stigall, Bluesub. I have a question regarding our IT department. Do we contract some of our services out through the RT, or does Kyle do all of them?
Kyle does a lot of it, but we have to have a company that comes in, and anything that Kyle is not capable of doing, we will call in the IT company to do that. There is still a big savings because of what Kyle gets paid compared to what their rate is. Their rate, if we call them in, is like $250 an hour, and if you look at Kyle's salary.
Okay, so then the other part of that is where I'm getting to as well. Kyle's doing 2 jobs. Why doesn't Kyle focus 100% on our RD department, maybe get qualified so we don't have to outsource? And then we can hire a part-time building inspector that's there from the hours of 2:30 on, when our other guy, or hire him come on full-time and have Kyle focus, because our website needs work. There's a lot of stuff in town that need work with an IT, and I don't think Kyle's up to doing it. And if we're outsourcing, I think that maybe the town would really look at to get the full quantity of what he's being paid for, to do it full-time and
Well,
not
we
do
don't
building.
outsource like to do the website or anything like that. Like I said, and I wish Kyle was here because.
Right, because he doesn't focus on that stuff. Our website is so outdated. That's why I'm saying he needs to be full-time doing his job, not doing building inspector at the same time he's doing his IT. Waste of money. Hire somebody part-time with the $28,000 that you're paying him to do the building inspector, and then they can do the building inspector full-time. So we have somebody here full-time that's available to the public. That's what the gentleman that said that does the job. And then Kyle can focus on the town, doing what he's supposed to be doing full-time, IT.
Kyle has always been assistant building inspector
Well, I'm
in
saying that,
IT.
and I don't think it's working, because he's lacking in doing what he's supposed to be doing for the town in his main job, that's all.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes.
Robert Colley from War Reading. First, I'm sorry I was late to the meeting. I sincerely apologize for that. So if I missed something, I just wanted to kind of segue into what everybody kind of gets when we're thinking about budget season. And I was doing some research on the population of the town of Plainfield, and I came across some kind of interesting things. I did a kind of a 10-year span on different categories. And this is through the Connecticut Economic Research Center. I believe that's where we get all our information from the clerk's office. And just on the population alone in Plainfield, 2019, this is projected. I guess this was from Northeast District Department of Health. We were at 15,067. That's our population. In 2010, we were at 15,406. So we're down 339 people. The population of 65 and over, they did it through 2008, 2010. we're at 1,887. Between 2013 and 2017, it was 2,688. That's 801 people. That's the difference of that time frame of 10 years, of 65 and older. Our Plainfield School District, PK to 12, 2017-18 was 2267. 2009, 2010, 2737. 470 students difference between the 10-year frame. Just to get back where the population, I'm trying to get to not to a point, but just to kind of take a look at, our population is decreasing. Our elderly are increasing extramentally. And I looked at this is a Social Security website. Their COLA raises. So anybody that's on Social Security, I think there might be a couple here in the room. They average over a 10-year span, 13.6% increase, which averages to 1.36% average yearly wage increase. It's not 2.5, not 2.3, 1.36% average yearly for the elderly. Our consumer price index, which is your cost of living, your COLAs, went up 15.55%, average 1.55 a year, which is pretty good. The elderly didn't keep up with it, but I guess pretty much everybody else did. I suppose the government employees, I suppose. Just certain things, I mean, I did the taxes levied in 2019-20, and I apologize again, I don't know what you guys are doing. This is just on the budget you guys proposed with the 2 mil increase, you know, which was taxes levy was a little over 29 million. And let's see, in 2010, 2011, like I said, using a 10-year span, it was 20 million. So it went up 44% in 10 years, which is 4.4% average in 10 years. And I mean, I'm trying to get, you know, to give you an idea, I haven't even talked about the poverty level. I think this is the picture you had, there's a number on that our poverty level is increasing. You know, and I know, like I said, I love our police department. I do. I think it's phenomenal that some towns like us, they don't have a police department. They have to rely on outside help or constables or 2 constables or a state police. But I did a 13-year span on the police department budget. Now again, the proposed budget was $2,164,000 approximately in 1920. 13 years ago, it was $1,300,000. It went up 64.52%. That's 4.96% a year. And I don't mean to pick on anybody in particular, but you know, our chief's budget over that same time frame went up 70.22%. That's 5.4% a year. And like I said, I like to go back to the COLA raises of the Social Security. 1.36%. I know you guys work really diligently on that, and the budgets that we've been in recession. The state is in horrible shape. The town it's struggling. I can't stand the fact of when we don't know the numbers from the state. It's not your fault. I understand that. I've talked to Paul for years. This is not new. For years, I used to say, hey, any definitive numbers come in from the state? Nope, don't know anything yet. How can you guys make a budget when you don't know what's going on? I was hoping that when they did the charter revision, because Paul used to always say, legally we can't do anything, we can't change the meeting because it's in our charter. And we didn't change it. It just doesn't make sense in any way, shape, or form to try and figure out a budget when you don't know the numbers that you have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, and I'll just comment on that. I know that's, for a lot of that very insightful information you just told us, I too have done my fair share of research on some of the statistics here in town. Also, I'd like to thank Ken for a lot of the statistics he gave us during his presentation, particularly the poverty rate. And I've gone out and talked to a lot of elderly people, some I know personally, and some I just met, you know, at a coffee shop around here, a lot of whom are on Social Security, disability, other fixed incomes around here, and they're still suffering. And I know that our population is increasing there, and as was mentioned in the beginning, I think Ted mentioned it, every Board of Finance member here can of course speak for themselves, but I would not vote to support a 2 mil increase budget as it was proposed. And I think one of the things that we made clear here tonight is that we don't have much time left. We have only a matter of a few days to work between now and Tuesday. but that is again why I'm scheduling that special meeting for Tuesday, is because we will be making our finalized decision on the proposed budget as of Tuesday. But I think, again, every Board of Finance member speaking for themselves, I would not support it as is, and so therefore we're not voting on it tonight to support that 2 mil increase. What it will end up being, we will of course be double checking a whole bunch of numbers between now and Tuesday, and then we will do the best we can. But again, we are also still hit between that rock, as you mentioned too, with the state. We have no idea when they're going to get around to passing their budget, and we're going to have finalized numbers from them. But we're going to try our best to have a proposed budget that is not going to continue to put the burden on all of our citizens. But again, so notably, there's a lot of the senior citizens here, again, some of which are still suffering from the revaluation last year. I know that's come up. A lot of people have mentioned that to me. How that's still a hard.
That's without the plow.
No, the total cost for the plow truck, it was initially in the initial proposal, $225,000.
Right, right.
After speaking with the highway department, they assured me that it would only cost $190.
Okay, but if you don't buy that truck, which I've seen a lot of our trucks, and they don't look that bad. And I ain't seen any of them broke down beside the road. And I ain't seen none of them on tow trucks. If anybody else had to tell me, right?
Well, I can
tell you.
3 of them.
Railroad broke down in here.
Okay, now, is it gonna cost $195,000 to fix them?
So I can't answer some of this, because I had a talk with John, who's the crew chief, and, because I asked the same question, because I've been in transportation my whole life. Our trucks run, we use them and abuse them till about 1.5 million miles. And I saw the mileage on the trucks and they were pretty low. But the problem is they've got they're 13 years old, and that's the bigger problem. It's not the engine, it's not anything like that, they're rotting out. So the two that broke, two of them this year in the middle of a snowstorm broke down. As you can see online, everybody's complaining, they can't, oh, my road's not plowed, da, da. And John talked to me and he says, listen, he goes, we had 2 go down in the snowstorm and we couldn't get to all the roads.
Could you buy off the motor, make money off the motor?
Well, again, I don't know about that, but I'm just explaining to Jack why, so I've known John a long time, John's not a bullshitter, I trust John, and if he says 2 are on the verge of breaking down, then I'm believing him, and I'm all for giving him a truck.
That's all right,
Yeah,
okay, right? But if you don't buy the truck, you take your $195,000 and put the roof on the town garage, and then the guy can get in the garage and work on your used trucks or the trucks you got, and they won't break down as much. And then you can take the rest of the money and buy your new computers that the town hall needs. That's all I'm saying.
No, and I understand what you're saying,
Right.
trust me, you've heard me tonight, I'm trying to find ways to cut costs.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah.
I gotta believe that in this case, I'm with the town garage at
Oh,
this point. You know what I mean? But I understand what you're saying, right? It makes sense, but I think they truly need it because the truck's so old that they want to replace. I believe it's 13 or 14 years old.
Well, I'll give you that. But my road wasn't plowed good this year. But I didn't go complain to the town. You know why? Because I had a new driver.
Oh, these trucks, the bodies are rotting out, that's what you're saying?
Yes.
Speaking of the highway department, have you begun any kind of negotiations or discussions with them about cutting back some of their budget? Yeah, I know the police department you have, I know you said you were, so I didn't know if there was...
Yeah, we did have those discussions. They actually are actually going to no longer use any of the overtime that they've approved thus far. That should be about a $10,000 cut. It's detailed on the handout that we provided. So
I didn't get one of them.
That's okay, it's right over there. That line item, that fund balance for that appropriation or that $61,000 that they're at right now, that's going to be folded over, and I think their initial appropriation was $72,000. So yeah, there's additional savings there.
So I can understand the roof and possibly the truck, but I mean, we just spent $340,000 on a backhaul truck for the highway department last year. How many hours have been put on that truck so far?
So I will correct you, that was $260,000. And when that truck finally came in, it was in the winter, and they just had their training, and they're scheduling to do all the drain basins. And one thing that I will share with everybody, we are looking to contract with surrounding towns to see if instead of other towns contracting out a different company, to contract with us, and then we would go into their towns. So there could be able to offset the cost of the backhaul.
Was there a reason why that wasn't done before we purchased it? To see if we could do some kind of a shared cost on the backhaul truck?
So we didn't contact about sharing the cost of it, but it will bring us revenue, so it really will offset the cost of it when you look at it that way.
Hi. John Kuzu. I worked for the highway department for like 20 years, and I worked on that backhaul truck, and if you put that truck on the road every day, that truck won't leave the town of Plainfield. So I don't know what you're thinking about contracting it to another town, but that's not gonna happen. I guarantee you that. I worked on that truck a long time, and we did a lot of basements.
I believe you're talking about the old backhaul truck?
That's right.
We're speaking of the new backhaul truck.
A backhaul truck is a backhaul truck, right? I mean, there's no difference.
So I'm not quite sure why you said that backhaul truck, the old one, would not.
The new one. There's so many basements in this town that haven't been done in years. That truck will never leave this town, never.
He's talking about distribution of labor.
Well, when I spoke with the crew chief, he said that is possible, and that you just have to schedule to make sure we maintain ours and get ours done, and then schedule with surrounding towns.
No, my other question is, with our new finance director, and I know with the vac truck, there was something about the states putting mandates. There's supposed to be a whole plan put in place. So will you be assisting on that as well?
I've got to look into it. The third day on the job,
Because I did
will get
vet you a
around to
little
it,
bit,
I can
and
definitely follow up with you on it.
I did look into some of your background, and I noticed that you have partaken in other towns where they've had like sewage projects and things like that, where they've had development, so I didn't know if that would be something he would be assisting with.
Definitely, because we're talking about the state mandated unfunded MS4 project, and what that consists of is it's a 5-year plan. So the highway department will be working on that, the sewer department will be working on that, town planner will be working on that. There's a part that the selectman plays in that, and there is a part that the finance director plays in that also. So it's not just one department that handles that.
And it was sanitary equipment that we purchased the backhaul truck from, correct?
Yes.
And they're located where?
Massachusetts.
Are they also located in West Haven, Connecticut?
I believe so.
Because I noticed they have locations in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, all over. Is that all they sell, is the backhaul?
No, they sell to cities and municipalities, garbage trucks, anything that a city or municipality, big vehicles like that would need.
Interesting.
Other comments, questions?
I'll just ask one question, just to clarify a point from earlier. I'll ask it as a citizen from Moosup, not necessarily as a Board of Ed member. If we, for the Board of Ed budget, the ECS revenues, it was mentioned that it's going to be amended on the proposal to use the $15.7 million ECS appropriation. If I understand correctly, and Ken and Ron, please interrupt me if I misstate anything, offering the 15.1 number, that not only would decrease that mill rate increase, because you're assuming a higher revenue, but then if the governor's proposal did end up being reality, we would be allowed to, by law, to reduce our own budget by that same amount, the $600,000.
Up to, yes.
Up to that same amount.
Yep.
So, two side questions to that. What, if anything, would prevent us from going with the Obviously, if we go with the governor's proposal, the mill rate looks quite large in terms of the increase. If the governor's number ended up being wrong and we went with that initial proposal, we would still be able to realize those increased revenues. Would there be a way to reduce that mill rate increase as well? Like, can we go both ways with that? Both we could reduce our expenditures because we're not getting as much in, but we could also reduce the mill rate increase if the governor's proposal ended up not being what we want.
Speculating on what the mill rate increase would be is difficult right now because we still have to take a vote on that. But we are confident that 15.1 million is the number. But if we can't get to the MBR because we can't use that 15.1, we incur additional costs that we can easily avoid. And it almost seems as if, obviously, if you incur costs, the mill rate must increase.
Right, so what evidence, and I'm genuinely curious, and I would hope that the number ends up being higher for the benefit of the town. What evidence do we have to believe that the number is going to be closer to 15.1 rather than what the governor's proposal currently says?
So we can speculate on the number in which way possible. If you look at historicals and you look at what the trend has been, you can definitely project what might be in the future. We had one board ECS fund in the last 3 years. There's no reason, trying to predict what legislature is going to provide as a fund is almost, it's a fool's errand. I think right now, making sure we're at a balance with our ECS grant and our budget would ensure that we don't get fined in bringing us up to the minimum budget. I think that should be the motive in determining the vote for the 15.1 million. In addition to it being on the website, it's exactly what is stated. Any speculation as to why that number is anything different from what the government and the state has posted on its website is beyond me.
The MBR seems to be a separate issue for the current year. That doesn't seem speculative to me at all. The speculation here, as you said, is for what the ECS number would actually end up being. And if it's just speculation at best, as a citizen, I would hope that we're going off of whatever solid numbers are available. But that's my opinion.
Sure.
And I would just reference that we kind of know this year the MBR, and we know that it has to be sustained. I think one of the things that allows you to err on the side of doing, I think, what is best for the town is if you build the budget around what the commissioner certainly listed as, if you add the 3 numbers she gave, well, subtract the reduction in enrollment, the number's 35,982. So we have that number. When that goes forward, whatever the ECS is, if you cut the money first or think that it should be reduced, what happens is you start having to put in place for July 1st that you won't run these programs. If you wait 3 months to see what happens, you then can't reinstate them. That's what happened with the CNA programs. I think by funding this, you have all the opportunity to then say, if the money is not realized, what will we do? We'll do what we did last year. It's pretty much open. For me, but I think the question that is being asked is, what happens when you're trying to project revenues if they're not being realized? Will you be thinking of that as some offset? Now, I know we've had conversations about how to offset that potential governor's reduction, whether that's some other collections, other supplemental, what else would you do to make sure that the governor, if he does prevail, it doesn't end up being an instant tax burden?
You're asking if there would be a buffer in our estimate calculations.
Well, I would certainly hope that, and I know that it's been done before, and Ken and his team are very diligent with this. If the town is gonna run with a 15.1 number, I would certainly hope that we have a list of 600,000 in cuts ready to go as well.
Well, yeah,
you don't want to have to do that, but if it's speculative in nature, then you have to be ready to speculate on all the possible ramifications of going with one number versus another.
Yeah, I think we're at a place where we're comfortable with 15.1 reasons you just stated. I don't think we appropriate or live beyond our means, given the uncertainty in the situation.
Ted?
Yes.
I noticed there ain't no females on the Board of Finance. Ain't that kind of discriminating against them?
Well, there is a election in November for some of the positions, so it's something we can keep in mind. Any other, yes?
They do it on a board.
Hi, I just had a quick, Kathy, on the bulky waste. You said it was gonna be 19,000 more if we kept the additional Wednesday on there?
If we, when I met with the waste management company, right now, previously they had Wednesday and Saturdays on there. So when I met with them and asked if they would add on the Wednesday, they said in order to add on the Wednesday, it would cost an additional $19,000 to what we're paying right now.
So we paid an additional almost $16,000 to have one less day, because it was 177 and then it went to 193, so that's $15,937 was the increase. And then you have another projected increase of $17,371. So how is that fitting in to, I don't get it, we're getting less service, you're negotiating less service, but for more money.
And I can't speak for that because I was not here when that was negotiated. I can say that in the contract, every single year, there was an increase.
You just got through telling us that you negotiated with them and we got.
No, what I told you is I met with them to see if I could change to get more, to change the contract. I did not negotiate that contract.
So where's the 17,000 increase for next year coming? You're just projecting what it could be?
That is, yes.
Other questions?
If I could just speak and just to Matt, your question, I feel like that maybe you are asking the $600,000, do we have a plan for that? We have looked at that and it's not just an expense thing, and correct me, Ron, if I'm wrong. We've looked at like supplemental tax, doing revenue. So is that more the answer that you're looking for? Where we're gonna make up that $600,000?
I'm certainly not hoping for a supplemental tax. My concern is correct. If we are going to, if part of an amended budget proposal is going to be a speculative number, right? So we'll say 600,000 higher than what we can otherwise point to with some degree of certainty. I think it would benefit both the town and the taxpayers to know that there's a plan B.
Yes, and there is a plan B.
But the plan B needs to be openly discussed and put out there as well, because that could very quickly become a reality should the governor's proposal end up being a lot more real than we hope it is.
But I also think, and I'm sorry, Ken, but I think you should be addressing that question to Ken, because that is ECS dollars.
I know, it's a board discussion. They, like I said previously, Ken has tackled that issue very diligently before, and I applaud him for it. But this is the town of Plainfield when we're talking about that. It's all of us that would end up paying the difference.
So we are having that discussion and making plans for that, yeah.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? All right, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, I have a motion, do I have a second? No. Okay, I have a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.